You actually get to sit in your seat today?
Oh, we'll see. I love that picture of the cat on the elbow. I sent it to my sister, who's a cat lady, so she had a giggle over it.
My gray cat's actually very mopey, so she's just as bad. Right? Like
Oh.
we just scream at each other.
Oh, that's all right.
She has a rough day of sleep.
Perfect. I will call the special council meeting of May 2nd to order. Looking for an adoption of the agenda.
So,
Councillor Billingsley, those in favor? Carried. Item number 3, in-camera section 16 and 17. Looking for a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor. Can you turn your thing? It's facing the audience. That's what I get for reading at the same time as talking. Moved by Councillor Elliott. Those in favor? Carried.
domestically lately. Well, I'm flying out on Thursday. I don't know if I need to have my proof of vaccination. For,
domestic.
yeah, I don't know either. I guess I should.
Looking for a motion to come out of camera. Councillor Elliott. I did that without your name tag even being turned. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. And Karen, you have a motion for us?
The motion that I have coming out of the in-camera session is I move that City Council accept the offer as amended.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 4A, Emergency Shelter and Hope Mission update.
Good morning, Council. I have two updates for you this morning. First pertains to the emergency shelter here in Wetaskiwin, and then I have an update on the work that administration has done towards, as directed, to reach out to the Hope Mission. Last Monday, our administration approached Council to provide an update on the funding for the trailer leases. They currently support the emergency shelter operated by Mustard Seed. At the time, last week, the GOA had approached administration about utilizing funding from the existing Wetaskiwin FCSS surplus to fund the trailers in place until the end of June. Council delegated this responsibility to the Wetaskiwin FCSS board, and last week, after much debate, the Wetaskiwin FCSS board chose voted not to spend the surplus to keep the trailers until the end of June. Once that decision was made, and in speaking with the government of Alberta, the GOA did notify administration that they had identified an alternative funding source and had enough funding to keep the trailers in place and the Mustard Seed operating until mid to the end of June. So administration last week started the process to transition the trailer leases to the Mustard Seed last week. The Mustard Seed had notified administration that they would be willing to take ownership of these leases if the decision was made to allow the shelter to operate until the end of June. So administration has brought a decision to Council this morning to determine whether Council will allow the shelter to remain in place operating at 5800 37th A Avenue until the end of June 2022, and a motion has been provided in the attached report. In regards to the Hope Mission update, administration reached out to the Hope Mission as directed by Council during the week ending April 22nd. In speaking with Bruce Reith, the Hope Mission is looking for a detailed site plan of the land available for a facility to support the homeless population. The Hope Mission is looking for a land donation from the City of Wetaskiwin, and they estimate that approximately 2 acres of land is required. The Hope Mission is looking to invest approximately $2.5 million of their own funding and looking for another $2.5 million investment from other levels of government. The proposed solution would be a combination of emergency shelter and transitional housing, understanding that the Hope Mission is still very much in the concept stage. Hope Mission envisions a 3-story building, including a place for homeless shelter, kitchen, offices, and transitional housing. The Hope Mission wants to work with the city and wants to build this facility in a place that Council will allow. Administration has been working since that initial discussion with Bruce Reith internally on the information specific to the site plans available for this type of facility, and is planning to email the Hope Mission this week with that information to keep their planning going. Administration is planning to return this item to Council once the Hope Mission has completed more work and has fleshed out their concept further. That concludes my report, and I can answer any questions that Council may have.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Paul. When the city made all its decisions, it was about a warming shelter, correct?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Elliott, the initial motion that Council made last year was for a winter emergency shelter specifically.
So continuing on with the shelter would be just providing housing and shelter, or would be providing shelter and food as well? Like, would that be included still?
Through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, my understanding is that there's enough funding to provide the exact same solution that is in place right now, which includes shelter, it includes food for those individuals, but it also includes services to support individuals that fall on the spectrum of homeless, not just the ones that are sleeping in the shelter overnight. The mustard seed in the previous presentation to council had provided statistics on that spectrum of homelessness, and we do have those updated statistics if council would like those throughout this discussion, but the shelter that's in place right now, if council makes that decision to keep it in place, we'd be getting the same type of service until the end of June.
And we have received communication from some of the businesses in that area that they are not very happy with what's going on right now. One individual we got a letter from, and in talking with that individual, his camera showed one individual walking around 7 times, scouting his place 7 times. He circled it 7 times, and this individual has had a number of things stolen and broken, and insurance costs with with what he has to pay in his deductible. It's costing him a lot of money, and I think we have to think about our business community as well in that area when we're moving forward with this. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Paul. Paul, can you give me some insight or some rationale as it relates to keeping this facility open when, as I understand, many or most of the winter shelters across the province have since closed?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, I'm not privy to a lot of the decision making as to why the government of Alberta is keeping certain shelters open and certain shelters closed. My take on this matter is that there's a strong level of political will within the Alberta government that is keeping the Wetaskiwin shelter in place.
And my next if I may, my next question relates to our last report, which showed that as the weather has gotten better, some of the shelter residents have left the facility and some of them are now living rough. So as we get warmer weather, would we foresee more and more people potentially moving out of the shelter, choosing to live rough?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, I'm unable to answer that question. I don't have a background in this.
Thank you.
Councillor Billingsley.
So my, excuse me. So my understanding, there's really a two-part to this. It's deciding whether or not to allow the shelter, and then as well, the Hope Mission component of it. Is that correct? Is that fair to say, Paul?
Through the mayor to Councillor Billingsley, the decision that administration is just asking for today is whether or not council would like to keep the shelter in that existing location until the end of June. In regards to the Hope Mission, there's no direction required there. We still have an outstanding motion from council. I've kind of provided my overview of how I plan on approaching, and if administration, if there's any feedback you have on that, on the Hope Mission and how our plan to move forward with that motion, I would appreciate that, but the decision today is specifically around the emergency shelter.
Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just a comment that Paul said it's the government's will that we continue with this, but I think it's the decision of the city of Wetaskiwin to determine this, not the government of Alberta. This is something that is affecting all of us and affecting our businesses. And I don't think the government of Alberta is paying deductibles for people who get damage and things to their buildings. So I am not in favor of extending this agreement.
So for a number of years, council has been advocating, lobbying for provincial support for funding for our vulnerable population. Our RCMP spend about 27% of their time managing public intox, vagrancy, loitering, panhandling. I have personally responded to a number of calls of individuals who are either passed out or too intoxicated to function, administered Narcan countless times. So we now have the will of the government asking us to continue on with the warming shelter so that we can establish a long-term plan for our vulnerable population. We've been wrestling with this for 3 winters now. Never had this type of support or even acknowledgement from the government of Alberta that we're getting right now. So while I absolutely empathize with the businesses in the area, I've done so my entire time on council and the 30 years plus that I've lived in the community and have watched as I've grown up as well. Nothing's changed. So if we continue to put it off, this is too difficult, we're getting pushback, then we're going to be in the same place that we are right now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now. It's going to be uncomfortable for a little while, and it has been uncomfortable. It was extremely uncomfortable when it was downtown. It was extremely uncomfortable when there was just a tent or a camp set up in behind Walmart. It's uncomfortable when there is a warming shelter in place, but it was also uncomfortable when none of those things existed. So I will be supporting this, looking for leadership from the government of Alberta to help us mitigate some of the issues that we've got here in town. We have consecutively, for 4 or 5 years now, been Alberta's most dangerous city, and with enough lobbying to the provincial government, we were successful in a pilot project for 10 RCMP members over 3 years, so a $5.1 million grant to support our community. If council wants to continue to support our community and make sure that we're better 5 or 10 or 20 years from now, then some of the pains that come along with that are going to happen. But we were experiencing pain long before there was a shelter in place, whether it was downtown or on 37A Avenue. Councillor Aberley.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion and then a comment, please. I move that City Council approves the location of the shelter to continue operating at 5800 37A Avenue until the end of June 2022, as requested by the Government of Alberta.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Councillor Aberley.
I'm in agreement with, or through the chair to council, I'm in agreement with Mayor Gandam at this point with everything that he set up to this thing, but I'm also going to bring in, as a downtown business, I emphasize fully with, as example, the email we got last night at 7 p.m. about this issue and how we have to continue looking out for our business community. It is my opinion that things did not improve greatly after the shelter moved. Yes, they did improve. Downtown is still busy. Downtown is still having issues with vagrancy, with things happening in that sense, but not to the degree we saw 2-3 years ago, prior to the shelter being downtown in that last year. So there is improvement seen there, but not so greatly that when it was moved somewhere else, that all of the issue is just in one area. So I think that part of our mandate here over and above that is looking after our businesses, looking after our citizens, and it's going to take time, it's going to take work, and it is the stuff that is happening at the Mustard Seed during the day that I am the most impressed with, is trying to help getting people on what we might call the straight and narrow, helping with their addictions, dealing with that sort of stuff, and some shelter overnight. Is it a perfect solution? No, but I will support this and continue to advocate for the extra policing, for lack of a better word, happening in and around the business communities in general. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How will this change as of July the 1st then, would be my question. What happens after June the 30th? I don't have a problem with the shelter per se, if they were providing programming, but just to have a drop-in housing, as was said in the letter, if you build it, they will come. And we have people here who we have not seen here over the past number of years. So I feel really strongly that if Mustard Seed is going to get into some programming and things, I could support this. But what's going to happen in July and August? And then do we rekindle this for September or November when it starts to get cold again? Like, is there going to be a lag in between? What is the government of Alberta going to fund for us? So I'm asking rhetorical type questions, I realize, but it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I sit on the FCSS board, and with the surplus that dollars, the GOA did ask for us to use some of that surplus money to fund this. I'm going to guess that they found some money somewhere else. But one of the things that we decided to take a look at through the FCSS board was a community assessment review. And for me, that was very important because I don't know what we need. I don't know if the government knows what they need. They have a good guess, but no hard data to be able to tell exactly what is required. And my concern is that the crime is still there. There is still calls for service. Have we fixed anything? I'm sure we have helped some people, which obviously is a wonderful thing. But would those people have been helped anyway without having the facility there causing some issues, whether it's new people to our community taking advantage of the services that are given there? I don't know. I would like to have the assessment done to see what exactly our community's needs are first, to know exactly what we need. And that even goes towards the mustard seed. Like, what do we actually need in this community? And I'm not sure we know that answer.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Councillors Billingsley and Elliott. The Mustard Seed does have programming going on, and they explained when they were here, was that 2 months ago now, some of their success stories that would help with those people that they are managing to get into more permanent housing or off the street, as we put it. I do not disagree at all that we need an assessment in town, but I don't want to throw away the work that is already being done at a level as we start to have some momentum. What's going to happen in July, of course, we don't know, and we're going to have to wait for the government of Alberta to provide some of those answers for us. But my fear right now is that the Mustard Seed, it takes time to go in, get trust of the community, to have people truly trusting that you are looking out for the best for them, that you can create programs or opportunities for them. And they've been working on that for a few months now. So we can continue to do these surveys while we are helping the people who are there. And at this point, I'm looking to help those people to make some difference while also supporting the community at large with the problems that may or may not be resulting or exasperated because of this. But we did look at how, when we had our policing priorities meetings, how levels of crime are going down, how theft is going down, and be better able to track people. And I think we just don't have the fullest picture yet. And again, I will continue to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Like Councillor Billingsley, I also sent on FCSS, and when the FCSS board decided not to put money into trailers, the subsequent discussions following that was using those surplus dollars, because at that time there was a likelihood that the trailer lease would not be renewed. And FCSS had some of the same concerns as Councillor Aberley did. Is that my song and dance? That's all right. And what the discussion was surrounding that is, rather than using some of those surplus dollars for a trailer lease, is using some of those dollars and having conversations with the mustard seed to offer outreach programming if the shelters were actually shut down. So some of the things that Councillor Aberley was talking about is still connecting with that section of vulnerable population that's in our community, being able to respond to concerns by the community with regard to groups of folks being in a particular area, and attempting to provide some level of comfort and security to the community that these folks were being looked after in some respects. I don't know the status of that particular conversation at this point in time, but that was part of the discussions and intent of FCSS. To the point of what's happening in our community, as Mayor Gandam said, 20% of RCMP time has, I think 27% was the number used, gone into dealing with issues like loitering, graffiti, public talks, panhandling, and so on. And I'm not sure that since mustard seed has come in, that, as Councillor Billingsley said, that we've seen less loitering, we've seen less graffiti, we've seen less public intoxication, or less panhandling. And I'm not negating the work that Mustard Seed has done with regard to some programming, but the kinds of things that our community is seeing in our community is felt not to have been reduced. And in fact, we're seeing bigger numbers in terms of the letter we got last night with regard to breaking in, enter, and vandalism. So are we making progress? I really don't know. And I think that's why Councillor Billingsley's comment about FCSS wanting to do a needs assessment in our community, so we have a really thorough understanding from professionals as to what the needs are for this community. And I will not be supporting the motion as it sits today. Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Elliott.
Sorry to belabor this, but if this were passed, would there be a potential for more security in that area? I know the police are doing more patrols and things, but would there be something that could guarantee, not guarantee, that's the wrong word, but could at least satisfy some of the businesses that there is more police presence?
Police have increased their patrols there, and if council wanted to, they could make a follow-up motion to hire a private security company again.
But the private security company didn't really seem to solve the issue at all. So, okay, thank you.
Anything else? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anything else? No? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Councillor Aberley, those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.